So Putin hears the best news he's heard his entire life. Literally, this is the best news that he's ever heard. And secondly, it's amazing that now the unions in California are behind Eric Swalwell, who's probably got to be one of the worst candidates we've ever seen. I mean, Fang Fang, anyone? And we'll explain that in a minute. And why is it that all of a sudden the Democrats are just uber concerned and caring about our troops all of a sudden? I mean, I thought that Republicans were always the people of the troops. So why is it that the Democrats care now? Lastly, in disgusting news, what is Candace up to these days? Let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to the Ripple Effect. Now, first off, what do I mean when I say that Putin has heard the best news he has ever heard? And some people would automatically assume that I'm talking about what Trump had said, because Trump had talked about NATO and talking about how since they've not come to his support, he doesn't plan on coming to their support, or at least guaranteeing that he would come to their support. So is that what I'm talking about? No. No, I'm actually not even talking about that per se, even though that is a result and is very clear that Putin will account for that. But rather, what I'm talking about is that there is nothing that Putin loves to hear more than the political self-love that all the European and NATO countries have been doing. And what do I mean by that? So all of this garbage that they just constantly spout of all their high horses and all their nonsense, and the moment there's any kind of actual conflict in the world where NATO would technically step in to help, I mean, mind you, Turkey has been attacked by Iran, which Turkey's a NATO ally, so it should activate all of the people to come to the defense of Turkey. They basically imply that they just don't care and they're not going to do anything about it. And Trump, in frustration, mentions the fact that he doesn't plan on coming to the aid of NATO now. Like, why would you? And again, if you were to give this a reasoned belief, and in this channel we look about impacts, everything has an impact on your life and everything else. We live with the false belief that NATO would come to our aid if ever there was a problem. But because of the political self-love that they've been giving themselves, as soon as we have a president that doesn't fit 100% of what they like, that goes out the window. So what you're telling me is that you're an ally only if we believe the exact same things that you do at the moment. It has nothing to do with the fact that we are built off of the same foundation in many ways and have a lot of the same beliefs. But the problem is they are so wrapped around their modern day political garbage that they cannot see the danger that this entails. Putin wants to hear nothing more than he can take whatever he wants and no one's going to stop him. And if you think that Europe is going to stop him, you're nuts. You're literally nuts. There is no way that Europe can. I think we're giving something like 70 or more percent of the arsenal that Ukraine is using. Europe, pull your head out of your butt before it becomes too much of a problem. Because otherwise you're going to lose everything. But this is where the impacts us as Americans. We really, really, really need to understand that we have to band together. Because if we don't band together and fight as one unit, then we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to have no one to help us. And we ourselves are going to be divided. And then what? If we don't maintain power and control power across the world, it's over. For everything that you believe, every way of living that we have, and all of these little garbage liberal ideas that they have, they won't be able to have either. Try doing, remember when there was this scandal over Chick-fil-A actually thinking that you should have Christian principles? And there was like the kiss-in with all the gay people going and kissing. Yeah, okay. So they tried that in Russia, and it didn't really work. Either they were getting beat up by the Russians themselves or the police got involved and took care of it. So remember, we are not the same. And not that I'm okay with that stuff, but my point is we live in a free country and not many countries allow freedom. And even the countries that say they're free in Europe, very quickly are showing that they don't have freedom. And we can look at that even with like the truckers in Canada and all the troubles that they ran into. Not the same. Now, we are in a particularly difficult place in America because you had Trump making huge roads into the unions in like 2016. And it made a difference. It really did in the election. It made a huge difference that he was impacting into the unions. But the problem is that we're at a point where there's a huge divide between the people that want to support the unions and the ones that don't. And you got to realize that the unions and the people, or the people themselves that work in construction trades, they work on homes and buildings and places and apartments and things like that, and that many times they'll never be able to live in, and definitely never be able to own unless they're in something like a union. And I'm talking about, I know from personal experience that the cost of working for a non-union company is incredible. The difference in value is so much, and there's a fight going on. And I understand the fight. I agree to some degree with a lot of the points. But because we're so desirous of freedom of market and enterprise, that we allow companies to undercut their people so dramatically that they don't get a living. And I'm not talking, guys, I'm not saying making a living wage working at McDonald's. I'm talking about the fact that when you work at McDonald's, you make less money than an apprentice in the trades. So when you come in as an apprentice in the trades and you're risking your life in many situations, and again, I know there's OSHA and all that kind of stuff to protect you, but you're risking yourself in very, very many ways. They're making less money as an apprentice when they first come in as someone who's fresh to flipping burgers at a McDonald's. But because everyone focuses on those people, they forget that there are the trades out there. And I'm talking about the Republicans. I'm talking about the libertarians and the conservatives who want it to be free market, but they don't understand that because there's free market to some degree in certain things, and I'm not saying closed market. What I'm saying is you got to realize that then, because of the left also being involved, we have so much illegal immigration, or people that live in other countries, like especially along the borderline states and so on, where they can come across and they're super cheap, and it drives down the market price for their labor, even if it's lesser quality. And you see a lot of people that are great people in construction going to the unions because of this. But what does that do? It gives the union immense power. And that immense power was recently thrown behind Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell is a trashy human being. I know I use that a lot, but he really is. Here's a guy who started sleeping with an agent from China whose name was Fang Fang, which, okay, I guess she had really big teeth. I'm kidding. That's just her name. And it's very clear that he gave her a lot of information. And yet now he's running for as governor of one of the largest states in America. Going to be the most powerful person in that state with some of the most, I think it is the most numerous state, isn't it? Because the Republicans don't know how to work with the unions. And because we're so worried about keeping actual things that should probably cost more down, then we lose it to the Democrats who are willing to cater to it, unfortunately. And there needs to be some kind of work. And I'm not saying I know what that is, but I'm saying the impact of this, of people not being willing to work with the unions, I'm talking about the Republicans not being willing to work with the unions and forcing this almost weird version of free enterprise and free whatever, free markets, that it doesn't allow for a proper understanding of what the value of that work is. And I can say that from personal experience. That's what the impact is, and you're going to see it in the election, unfortunately. Now, in completely other news, it amazes me how the Democrats all of a sudden love our troops. And what do I mean by that? There was a video going on around right now of Ilhan Omar just being so emotional and sad about the troops that were being sent over to Iran. Oh, they're just losing their lives. And it's just horrible. And I don't know why the Republicans are so horrible and just want to waste the lives of our young people. And why do I don't care what she has to say and don't believe her? Because for one, she's someone who should be denaturalized and deported for all of her usual nonsense, fraud, and everything else that just wait till it gets proven. And I believe that anyone looking at the situation would know that that's for sure true. Why don't I believe them? It's amazing because they don't really care about the troops very much otherwise and are very much opposed to them. But the moment they can use them as pawns, all of a sudden they care. If you can't see the difference in that, then I don't know what you're looking at. You should be able to see the difference of the view of whether or not, even under Biden or even during COVID, when there was a bunch of stuff, crazy stuff going on, we still cared about them. Okay? Even though it was a different president, even though he was doing terrible things, it doesn't matter. Our view of them didn't change. But these Democrats, they'll use anything as a token. And the impact of that is there are people out there who will see this and think, oh, wow, she really cares for our... And honestly, I don't know why they would, but they only see what the news media is going to share with them. And this story is going to be like, and the Democrats are really worried about our troops. And they're hearing all these briefings and they're really worried about our troops. And what's going to happen is we need this to be completed, but we need it to be completed properly. And if we don't, what we're going to see is a huge impact during the next election that's going on right now. And the problem is because of all the media that's force-feeding garbage into everyone's mouths, we're already seeing the effects of this in the polls because people just eat this swill or drink the swill rather, and don't realize what kind of garbage is actually being given to them. We must get the information out there and the news out there that these people are hogwash and they don't care except to use our military as pawns. And if you actually care for the military, you support them in every way that you can. And she doesn't. And she's been very clear about that before this. So the garbage to come out now and use it is disgusting. Now, another thing that's disgusting, Candace Owens. Well, she's got a new conspiracy theory. I mean, I guess she's gotten her pound of flesh from Erica Kirk and Charlie Kirk and everyone who apparently in TPUSA, according to her, has, was involved apparently in the murder of Charlie Kirk because, of course, everyone that loved him was desperate to kill him, apparently. But that she's finally done with that. No, I'm kidding. She's not done with that. But she is mentioning a momentary glance in another direction, and that was Nick Shirley. And if you know Nick Shirley, he's been famous because of the whole Minnesota thing where he discovered all the fraud there. And there's thinking something like $39 billion worth of fraud. And he's saying that there's considerably more here in California. But what does she think about him? And of course, everyone loves her opinions, and so they're dying to hear what she has to say. And so, unfortunately, they probably do because she's a pretty big podcaster. But she said he's actually a fraud and making things up. And she said, oh, what he's saying is weird. I can't believe this stuff. This is, please. And I think it's probably one of the funniest things that I've ever heard coming from literally the queen of lies and confusion herself. Here's someone who wouldn't know what the truth was if it smacked her in the face. Because she's so busy weaving lies to tear down everyone she could possibly tear down just to get one more iota of fame, one more iota of views. Like, if it was money she was after, she'd be the perfect example of how she thinks the Jews are when it comes to money. I mean, she is so bad at the truth and not knowing what truth is that she's so confused everyone and people that I will see it in my comments. People who will say the most asinine, stupid things defending her because of how she twists the truth so much that people don't even know what the truth is by the time she's done twisting it. But yes, she's worried that Nick Shirley's fraud. Don't mind that 100% of the fraud that he's pointing out is pretty legit. And there's a lot of follow-up going on right now about that fraud. But no, he's horrible. Oh, the irony. What impact does this have to you? One is people are trying to destroy Nick Shirley because he actually is discovering the fraud. And the fraud that he's dealing with affects your day-to-day because every time we're told that there's this nebulous social sphere that we can't pull the money out of, we can't defund because babies won't have their milk and women won't have their EBTs when they have no, little children, all that stuff. Come to find out, it's a lot of people running around with BMWs and Mercedes. with fake companies and fake learning centers, or what was that one? Leaning center, because they couldn't spell learning. And now here in California, I think it's a lot of hospice places or hostels and that kind of thing. That's the impact. It takes money out of your pockets. That's what it does. And here this dingleberry, Candace Owens, wants to try to discredit him. And with enough influence that she has, what if she does discredit him? What if she does that which the Democrats are trying to do most and hide the fraud for him? Good job, Candace. You've gone the full horseshoe. You're all the way on their side. This is why what we do is important. And it's very, very important that we keep it going. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps. And even if you don't like the show, I thank you for your view. I sincerely do. Have a good day.